Okay, so actually I just heard on the radio out here that H1N1 may not be the worst thing going around right now. Apparently the entire world is going to get together and do a Thriller dance in honor of Michael Jackson. So there are certain threats that may be beyond H1N1. But today we're going to be talking about not only H1N1 but primarily H1N1. But in order to really understand what the problem is with H1N1 potentially, or to understand what to do in general in flu season, there's some things a little bit about why we're doing it, what we need to do in terms of keeping ourselves well, why that's important, what our immune systems do. We'll be talking about vaccinations and things like that as well, and different things that go into decision making for these. So let's just talk about the idea of seasonal changes in the immune status. From a Chinese medicine perspective, every time the seasons change, it stresses the body because things are changing just like normal. Anything that happens in your life, if something changes in your life, you get a little stressed about it. So when you do get stressed, then your immune system goes down, and we'll talk about that, why that is in a little bit. But at any rate, so the Chinese, a lot of what they did was through observation, and they observed, and we all see this, when the seasons change, that's when everybody starts to come down with it. So these are particularly important times to be very vigilant in terms of your taking care of yourself better than you would during, just the summer months or just the winter months and so forth.
Interestingly enough, recently with the vitamin D research, and we're going to get to that later, there's some corollary between vitamin levels and the seasonal change as well, which is kind of an interesting corollary.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. So there are a number of things that are seasonal that can also affect that. So we'll have just a simple, and this is a very simplified introduction to the immune system. That happens to be one of the most complicated topics you could possibly tackle. So we're just going to just to have a basic understanding as to what we're talking about, for example, with vaccines, or what we're talking about with when we're trying to boost our immune system. So we have essentially, and again, this is a huge simplification, but essentially two kind of lines of defense. We have a first line of defense, which we call the innate immune system, and that's really the immediate response to an invader that's been recognized. So that's, for example, you're just walking around breathing things in. Why don't you get sick all the time? You're exposed to things all the time. Well, because your innate immune system just immediately recognizes it and terminates it on the spot. Or it says this isn't a threat, and so we're just gonna let it go. This is what happens, for example, in allergies. Sometimes your immune system starts mistaking things for threats that may not be threats, and you can get different kinds of reactions, and we'll talk about some of that as well. And some of these things you may have heard of: macrophages, neutrophils, natural killer cells, these kind of things, a lot of the white blood cells. So if you ever look at your blood work or anything, you see it says WBC on there. So these are some of the things, and they break them down from the different kinds so they can tell what part of the immune system is being affected the most. So that's why you have these. But then the second is an acquired immune system, and this is when something gets past the innate, because some pathogens are strong, and then you have a really real threat. And these aren't in all species, so humans are one of the species that have adapted this type of immune system. So this is the kind of lock and key thing, where you create something very specific to target something very specific. So this is where we're getting on the idea of vaccinations and things like that. But this is happening internally. The concept of why we're using a vaccination is based on the acquired immune system. So again, it says the body mounts a more complicated response and remembers it, because it has to figure out things. It has to put things together to match what's coming in. So it takes more energy out of the body. It takes a longer time. Different organs are involved, and so forth. Okay, so what are the organs of immunity? We have here, and by the way, if it looks like this is the first time I've seen these slides, because it is. We have the lymphatic system. We have the circulatory system, the bone marrow, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, and the mucosal-associated lymphoid tissue, galt and malt. I kind of wanted to go backwards. Because I don't know if this will. Oh, this goes backwards. Okay. Let's go back to this picture here. Is there a slide that has the actual organs on them? No? Okay. So I'm just going to point out some of the important. Now, obviously, the immune system is located everywhere, but when we're talking about GALT and so forth, we're talking about in the gut around here, right? So some of the immune organs on the left side here, we have around here the spleen, and then up here we have like the thymus, which produces T cells, which would be your acquired immune response is more relevant to those. And then you have, various centers as we had here for the lymphatics, for lymph nodes. You can't see it, I guess. But a lot of the centers of the lymph nodes, for example, down in the inguinal area, in here, they're really all over, okay? So for any of you who are patients here, if you were wondering why we're always pressing around on your body in different spots to see if there's anything inflamed or tender or so forth, a lot of what we do is working with the immune system. So this is what we're checking with when you come in for checkups and so forth. We're saying, oh, okay, do you have inflammation in your lymph nodes? Is there anything going on in your spleen, your thymus, and so forth? And this is one of the ways that we can help to maintain your health. And if you do feel something weird and you're like, gee, my chest is feeling funny right in here, and everybody around me has a cold or something, or my neck's really, really tight. A lot of times this can have to do with your battling something. Okay, let's.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If you have a tendency toward like GI problems, does that mean that your GALT system is off, or is it?
Well, this is one of the things that we'll talk about, because when we're making these recommendations, the nice thing with this is, you go on the internet and you read all the recommendations. Oh, gee, make sure you eat right, make sure you exercise, blah, 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 blah. We're going to give you the exact reasons why this is the case. And when you're talking about GALT, for example, because there's so much of your immune system, I believe the figure's 70 or 80% of your immune system is in your gut, because you're swallowing pathogens every time you eat. And so, if your immune system is preoccupied, if it has to stick a lot of resources into your gut all the time, that leaves your exterior more vulnerable.
Actually, you have to remember that like the inside of your gut is still outside of your body. It's still the exterior of the body until you've actually absorbed those things. So it's actually, in a sense, kind of like the skin inside your body that's allowing things in. So
just to build on that slightly, it's because, for example, before something gets into your body, it hits the skin, right? But if you're swallowing something before it gets into your body, it's got to get through.
It has to get through
your gut.
Yeah, the epithelial cells.
So that's what he's. Okay, so here we go. The skin protects us from invaders. Very, very good. Skin protects us from invaders that may physically touch us. The mucosal lining in the sinuses and lungs protect us from invaders in the air. So this is, for example, mucus production, right? So if you guys wonder why you always get stuffy noses and how inconvenient that is when your nose starts running and you run to take an antihistamine or something like that to dry it up, what you're doing is you're knocking out the mucosal lining defenses against things that are coming in. Your body detects something coming in that shouldn't be coming in, produces a lot of mucus, that stops it. Unless, of course, you take an antihistamine and knock it out.
Okay, but is an expectorant okay?
Expectorant. Possibly, if you can expectorate it enough. Okay, blood flukes. The digestive system attempts to protect us from microorganisms in food, bugs in salad, parasites in raw fish or meats. So, for example, this is something that Steve was just